I broke up with the most popular girl on campus. She was silent for 3 seconds, then smiled. Okay. A wave of relief washed over me, and I turned and walked away. The next day, my dad's company went bankrupt. My mom's jewelry boutique was bought out in a hostile takeover. A fleet of black Rolls-Royces was parked in front of our family's Greenwich mansion. Isabella Vance stepped out of the lead car, flanked by a team of bodyguards in black suits. She tilted my chin up with her fingers, her voice a velvety, chilling whisper. Your parents have already consented to our marriage. The dowry was a lifetime of financial security for them. She leaned in closer. So, do you still want to break up with me, my destitute fiancé? 1. My parents stood at the entrance of our home, looking as if they'd aged a decade overnight. Their eyes were filled with despair and a silent, desperate plea directed at me. Isabella's hand rested lightly on my shoulder, but its weight was absolute, leaving no room for argument. Let's go, Cole. We're going home. I was escorted into the car by 2 bodyguards, one on each side. The moment the locks clicked shut, the shock wore off, and I lunged for the door handle. It wouldn't budge. I scrambled wildly for the other side, but a bodyguard's hand clamped down on my shoulder like a steel vise. I was pinned. Don't make this difficult. Isabella's voice was calm beside me. She reached out, her cool fingertips tracing the line of my jaw. We're going home. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration. The car glided smoothly toward a penthouse duplex crowning a skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. The elevator opened directly into the apartment. The security was so tight a fly couldn't have gotten in. When the doors opened, I froze. Everything was unnervingly familiar. The bookshelf from my college dorm room, the limited edition sneakers on my bedroom shelf, even the hoodie I'd tossed on my bed. It was all here, arranged with meticulous care. She showed me to my new room, which was 3 times the size of my old one. A poster of my favorite band was on the wall. The newest PlayStation sat on the desk, and the walk-in closet was filled with the latest collections from Tom Ford and Brioni. Everything I ever liked she had given me tenfold. It felt like a meticulously curated museum exhibit, and I was the specimen about to be pinned to the center display. Are you insane? My voice trembled. She tilted her head, her expression as innocent as a child's. I just want to be with you forever. Isn't that what love is? My phone was plucked from my hand and tossed to a bodyguard. She handed me a new one, a sleek, seamless device with no buttons. When it turned on, there was only one contact. Isabella Vance. I rushed to the floor-to-ceiling windows, searching for any chance of escape. The vast glass wall offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, glittering and cold. The windows only opened a crack, and beyond them was a nearly invisible security screen. We were 1,000 feet in the air. There was no way out. A butler in a tuxedo appeared behind me and bowed slightly. Mr. Anderson, all your needs will be met, except for leaving this residence. The reality of my situation crashed down on me. I didn't sleep that night. Isabella's room was right next to mine, separated by a single wall. I could feel her presence like an invisible web, wrapping tightly around me. A bone-deep chill crept up from the soles of my feet, followed by a tidal wave of humiliation. I, Cole Anderson, had gone from the son of a wealthy family to a canary in a gilded cage. 2. Fighting back directly was pointless, so I started faking compliance. I ate every meal. I barely spoke. I moved through the penthouse like a ghost, mapping out the location of every security camera, timing the guards' rotations. A week later, I saw an opening. I clutched my stomach and collapsed, beads of sweat forming on my forehead. My stomach. I need a hospital. I had to get to a public place. If I could just get outside, I could find a way to call for help. Isabella knelt beside me, her face a mask of concern. She didn't agree immediately. Instead, she took out her phone and made a few calls. Half an hour later, an ambulance hadn't arrived, but a top concierge doctor with a team of 3 specialists and 2 nurses had. They set up a mobile clinic in the living room of my new home and gave me a full workup with state-of-the-art portable equipment. The diagnosis: minor indigestion. My plan was a childish joke in the face of her absolute wealth. She sat on the edge of my bed, peeling an apple for me with her own hands. The silver paring knife danced between her delicate fingers, the peel spooling off in a single, unbroken ribbon. The tip of the blade occasionally grazed the white flesh of the fruit. "Cole," she said softly, "don't test my limits again." She looked up at me, her eyes devoid of any warmth. "Next time, I don't know what might happen." Going to my university classes became my only contact with the outside world. But even that freedom was conditional. 2 bodyguards, both well over 6 feet tall, followed my every move. The entire campus knew that Cole Anderson had become Isabella Vance's fiancé, a possession that required 24/7 surveillance. During a break between classes on my way to the restroom, I managed to create a few seconds of distance from my Minders and ran in my best friend, Leo Martinez, at a bend in the hallway. I quickly pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. It had 2 words on it: "Help me." I shoved it into his hand. "Don't look at it now. Read it later. Find a way to call the cops." Leo stared, bewildered, before he could even pocket the note. A soft arm looped through mine. Isabella had appeared out of nowhere, smiling like a blooming rose. "Leo, it's been a while. Cole and I are engaged. You have to come to the wedding." As she spoke, she casually plucked the note from Leo's stunned fingers. She opened it in front of me, glanced at the words, and then smiled again, a smile laced with a cruel, triumphant pleasure. That night, a video played on the massive screen in the living room. In the video, Leo's father, a respected university professor, was being invited into a dark town car by several men in black suits. The scene cut to Leo, his face pale, signing a document. The document was an affidavit. He was voluntarily severing all contact with Cole Anderson, effective immediately. The blood rushed my head. I violently flipped the dining table. Plates and glasses shattered across the floor. "Isabella." It was the first time I had ever screamed at her. My voice was hoarse with fury. She didn't get angry. She didn't even look surprised. She slowly rose and walked toward me, a twisted, deeply satisfied smile spreading across her face. "You see," she whispered, as if sharing a secret, "the only way for you and the people you care about to be truly safe is to stay with me." My rage was extinguished by a flood of ice water, leaving nothing behind but absolute despair. 3. I finally broke. Fighting her only hurt the people I cared about. I began to truly act the part, becoming a quiet, obedient shadow. Whatever she wanted, I did. If she told me to smile, I smiled. My compliance seemed to please her, and her surveillance visibly relaxed. At least I could now move freely within the confines of the massive penthouse. One day, while tidying the library, I noticed an unnatural seam in the wallpaper behind a row of bookshelves. My heart hammered in my chest. I waited until Isabella left for a charity gala, then used a butter knife to carefully pry the panel open. Behind it was a room that made my blood run cold. The walls were plastered with photos of me. Thousands of them. Me, shooting a basketball in middle school. Me, from behind, accepting my diploma at high school graduation. Me, sleeping in the university library, my head resting on a book. Countless moments from countless angles, nearly all of them taken without my knowledge. Glass display cases held a bizarre collection of my relics. A water bottle I drank from in 8th grade. An eraser I'd worn down and thrown away in 10th grade, which she had apparently retrieved. There was even a tattered old basketball jersey that had been ripped during a game. My mom had thrown it out years ago, now folded perfectly on a velvet pedestal. This was her shrine, and I was the god she worshipped. In the center of the room sat a delicate silver frame. Inside, pressed neatly, was a faded, well-worn handkerchief. I recognized it. In 7th grade, Isabella had just transferred to my school after some family trouble. She was always alone. I saw her crying once in the hallway, and on a whim, I gave her my handkerchief. I had forgotten about it completely. But for her, that one small, random act of kindness was the beginning of an entire religion. I understood then that her obsession wasn't just a phase. It was a sickness that had taken root in her very soul. A chill shot through me. As I turned to leave, a shadow fell over the doorway. Isabella was back early. She stood there, watching me. She was still in her evening gown, her makeup flawless, but nothing could hide the madness in her eyes. She saw my terrified face and didn't look surprised at all. She walked slowly into the room, picked up the silver frame, and pressed the handkerchief to her face, inhaling its scent as if it were a drug. "You see?" I knew you were mine, even back then. Her voice was soft, but it coiled around my heart like a venomous snake. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, her warm breath on my ear. Now you've finally seen all of my love, she whispered, her voice filled with a kind of sacrificial fervor. Are you happy? In that moment, my fear reached its absolute peak. 4. I thought I would die in that beautiful prison, but an unexpected visitor shattered the suffocating stillness. Carter Sterling, the man Isabella's family had arranged for her to marry, the heir to another corporate empire. He showed up one weekend afternoon. When he saw me in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his eyes filled with undisguised contempt. Is this the lapdog you keep in your cage? He sneered at Isabella. Shut up. Isabella reacted like a cornered animal, instantly placing herself between us. She defended me furiously, and the two of them erupted into a vicious argument. I kept my head down, feigning fear, but my ears were straining to catch every word. For the first time, I realized Isabella's power within her family was not absolute. Her grandfather, the patriarch of the Vance dynasty, was vehemently opposed to our relationship. Carter's presence was a stone thrown into stagnant water. It forced Isabella to divide her attention, to deal with family pressure and fend him off. The suffocating bubble of her control finally showed crack. Carter clearly saw me as an obstacle and a rival. To humiliate me, he accidentally spilled a glass of red wine on my white shirt. Sorry about that. Slipped, he said, looking down his nose at me. I assume clothes for the help aren't too expensive? I said nothing, quietly dabbing at the stain with a napkin. Just as he turned away, smugly assuming I was nothing more than a spineless plaything, I looked up, and I mouthed 2 words to him. Help me. Carter froze mid-stride. He turned back, the disdain on his face replaced by a calculating, predatory smile. He understood. A few days later, Isabella, determined to prove my worth to her family, forced me into a suit and dragged me to a high-profile business gala. As expected, Carter made his move. In front of a crowd of industry titans, he brought up a highly complex overseas investment fund, one riddled with legal and financial traps. He directed the question to me. Mr. Anderson, what's your expert take on this project? Enlighten us. All eyes turned to me, waiting for the inevitable humiliation. Isabella's face tensed. I held my wine glass, silent for a long moment. Then I spoke. I didn't bother with the convoluted terms of the fund. Instead, I went straight for the jugular, the questionable capital backing of its organizers. It was a case study my dad had talked about with me in his study back before our world fell apart. I pointed out, in no uncertain terms, that the fund's core risk was its use of legal loopholes for leverage fraud. I concluded by proposing something no one had considered, a reverse strategy to short the entire enterprise. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at me with disbelief, including Isabella and her powerful grandfather, who had just arrived in time to hear my analysis. 5. After the gala, everything changed. Isabella's grandfather still wore a stern expression, but his gaze now held a measure of respect instead of contempt. Isabella's obsession with me deepened. She saw me as a hidden genius, a treasure she had unearthed, and her desire to control me grew even more pathological. And Carter Sterling was now fascinated by me. He no longer saw a simple pet, but an interesting and potentially useful adversary. He found a moment to speak with me alone while Isabella was out. I can get you out of here, he said, straight to the point. You disappear from Isabella's life forever, and I'll help you restore your family's assets. How can I trust you? I asked. He smiled. You have no other choice. It's either work with me or stay locked in this cage for the rest of your life. I feigned a long, difficult deliberation before finally reluctantly agreeing. Our false alliance began. I used him to gather information about the outside world, the Vance Corporation's internal structure, their latest business moves, even the personal weaknesses of key family members. He, in turn, used me to try and find Isabella's vulnerabilities. I managed to secretly contact Leo using an encrypted phone Carter provided. I had him use the last of my personal funds to register a shell company, a ghost consultancy that couldn't be traced back to me. While I fed Carter a stream of terrible advice on how to win Isabella's heart, causing him to fail spectacularly at every turn, I was mentally dissecting the corporate data he gave me, searching for the one weak point I could use for a fatal blow. Isabella sensed a change in me. She'd catch me staring out the window, lost in thought, and her paranoia would spike. She'd double down on my physical security, increasing my bodyguard detail from 2 to 4. But in doing so, she relaxed her guard on the one thing that mattered most: the flow of information. She believed that as long as my body was a prisoner, my mind was too. Finally, Carter arranged a perfect escape plan for me. It was set for the night of a major Vance family charity ball. Security would be stretched thin with so many guests. Following his instructions, I excused myself to the restroom, ditched my guards in the crowded hall, and slipped through the hotel's service corridors toward the underground parking garage. The exit was just ahead. The air of freedom felt almost real. My heart was pounding with the promise of a new life. But a deep, unnerving feeling coiled in the pit of my stomach. 6. I burst into the parking garage, breathless, and ran to the designated spot. B37. The getaway car was there, but the person standing beside it wasn't Carter's driver. It was Carter, and next to him, Isabella. Carter leaned against the car, a mocking smile on his face. I just wanted to prove to Bella that a lowlife like you could never be worthy of her. He gestured toward me like he was presenting a prize catch. See? The moment you give him an opening, he runs. The smile was gone from Isabella's face. The tenderness was gone. All pretense had vanished. Her eyes were bloodshot, a terrifying storm of heartbreak, betrayal, and a raw desire for destruction. She walked toward me, the sharp click of her heels on the concrete echoing like a death countdown. I gave you everything. Her voice was a ragged, broken whisper. And you still try to leave? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. An arctic chill shot up my spine and into my skull. 2 bodyguards grabbed me, forcing me back into the car. This time, my destination wasn't the luxurious bedroom. It was the shrine, the room filled with my stolen past. My real prison. The door was locked from the outside. I was completely cut off from the world. Isabella no longer bothered with her gentle facade. She would visit every day, watching me through a pane of bulletproof glass, her eyes holding nothing but cold, undisguised possession. In here, she'd say, you won't think about leaving anymore. She removed everything from the room that could possibly be used for self-harm, right down to my belt and shoelaces. She made me wear soft, silk pajamas, claiming it was to prevent me from hurting myself. Under this extreme pressure and humiliation, my mind became clearer than ever before. The fear and anger burned away, leaving only the cold, hard resolve of vengeance. I began to replay everything. Carter wanted to use me to hurt Isabella, to prove he was the better man. Isabella's grandfather wanted to use Carter's family connections, but was intrigued by the business acumen I'd shown. Every single one of them had their own desires, their own weaknesses. They were all pawns I could use. This failure taught me one crucial lesson. Relying on others for freedom was a fool's errand. The only way to get my life back was to tear down everything Isabella held dear, to destroy the very corporate empire she used to imprison me. Only then could I truly be free. 7. I began to play the part of man who was completely broken. I stopped fighting. I stopped talking. I stopped even looking at her. I spent my days curled in a corner, my eyes vacant, like a puppet with its strings cut. I exhibited all the classic symptoms of PTSD, becoming fragile, anxious, and desperately dependent. At first, Isabella watched me with cold detachment, but then she noticed me secretly clutching a jacket she'd left behind, trembling after she was gone. She bought the act. She finally believed she had tamed me, that I had become completely hers. Her vigilance dropped significantly. To show off her power and soothe my fragile state, she started handling less sensitive company business in front of me. She would take video calls or answer her subordinates right outside the glass wall. She thought I wouldn't understand, but my brain was working like a supercomputer, piecing together the fragments of information she let slip. Vance Corporation, hostile acquisition, emerging tech startup, K-Tech, fatal leverage risk. The fragments formed a complete picture in my mind, a blueprint for revenge. My chance came. On a day she deemed me stable enough for a supervised trip to the library. I seized a 3-minute window. I opened her laptop and accessed an encrypted journal program I had once, in another lifetime, helped her set up. As fast as my fingers could move, I sent an encrypted email to Leo's secret account. It contained two instructions. First, have our ghost consultancy immediately and anonymously publish a detailed market analysis report. The title, Warning, the Hidden Bubble and Collapse Risk in Vance Corporation's Leveraged Acquisition of K-Tech. Second, take the details I'd overheard about K-Tech as undisclosed software vulnerabilities and anonymously package them for Vance Corp's biggest rival, Apex Dynamics. I erased every trace. When Isabella returned, she found me absorbed in a coffee table book. I offered her my first smile since my imprisonment, timid and reliant. She was pleased, taking it as proof that I was finally learning to love her. She granted me more freedoms, like being able to walk around the penthouse, albeit with guards. I used this opportunity to find a microtransmitter hidden under the library sofa. I recognized the model. It was made by a subsidiary of Carter Sterling's company. I didn't remove it. Later, when I was alone, I turned toward the bug and whispered, my voice barely audible. K-Tech, Apex, it was all me. This is what you deserve, Bella. I needed Carter to believe that the coming crisis at Vance Corp was my doing. I would make these two master manipulators turn on each other, and I would wait in the darkness for the storm to break. 8. The storm hit faster and harder than I ever imagined. The anonymous short seller report was a depth charge dropped into the financial market. Its analysis was precise, its data undeniable, and exposed the dangerously high-risk financial leverage Vance Corp was using for the acquisition. Panic spread. Vance Corp's stock plummeted, losing nearly $10 billion in market value in 3 days. Simultaneously, Apex Dynamics used the K-Tech vulnerability report I'd provided to launch a surgical strike against the acquisition. They announced a superior, upgraded version of the same technology and offered K-Tech a much better partnership deal. Vance Corp was trapped. If they proceeded with the acquisition, they'd be buying a devalued, possibly defective company. If they pulled out, the massive initial investment and the interest on the leveraged funds would create a catastrophic financial black hole. The Vance family was in chaos. At an emergency board meeting, Carter Sterling played a recording for everyone to hear. It was my confession to his hidden microphone. It was all me. This is what you deserve, Bella. The words echoed in the silent room. Carter pointed at Isabella, his voice ringing with accusation, condemning her for letting the fox into the henhouse, for allowing a kept man to leak corporate secrets and bring ruin upon the family. Isabella had no defense. She stormed back to the penthouse, losing her composure in front of me for the first time. She grabbed the front of my shirt, her eyes bloodshot with a mix of agony and rage. Was it you? Tell me, was it you? I maintained my role as the innocent, terrified victim. I trembled in her grip, unable to speak, shaking my head as tears welled in my eyes. My blank fear and confusion planted a seed of doubt in her mind. She couldn't believe that the fragile, glass-like man she held captive could possibly engineer such a disaster. She chose to believe it was a conspiracy orchestrated by Carter to destroy her. She began a frenzied investigation into Carter, completely ignoring the real threat circling her company. In the midst of the chaos, the final piece of my plan fell into place. The overseas hedge fund that had provided the leverage capital smelled blood in the water and issued a margin call demanding immediate repayment. Vance Corporation's entire line of credit vanished overnight. Following my third instruction, Leo leaked this critical news through our ghost consultancy to a notoriously aggressive Wall Street vulture fund. The war for the soul of the Vance empire had officially begun. 9. Vance Corporation was facing the greatest crisis in its history. A stock market crash, a frozen credit line, banks calling in loans, a rival's ambush, and a hostile takeover. The empire was about to fall. Isabella's grandfather, a man who had dominated the business world for 50 years, went gray overnight. Carter Sterling wasn't over his head. He had only meant to sting Isabella, not attract a shark big enough to sink the whole ship. They were out of their depth, with no way out. At that critical moment, I made my move. I found the young maid I had helped months earlier. During my initial captivity, I had given her my entire month's allowance so her sick mother could have surgery. I asked her to deliver a single message to Mr. Vance. If you want to save your company, come see me. I am the only cure. 30 minutes later, the old man stood before me. Not outside the glass, but inside my cell. I laid out my terms. First, the immediate and full restoration of my father's company, my mother's boutique, and our family home, with compensation for all financial and emotional damages. Second, my unconditional and permanent freedom. No member of the Vance family was to ever interfere with me or my family again. Third, $50 million in cash as my seed capital. In exchange, I would give them a complete, actionable plan to neutralize the hostile takeover. Mr. Vance stared at me, his weary eyes cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally, the resignation of a man with no other cards to play. He agreed to all my conditions. The next day, for the first time, I sat at the Vance Corporation's boardroom table as an equal. Mr. Vance was at the head. Across from me sat Carter Sterling, his expression a mixture of awe and humiliation. I calmly laid out my strategy. The core of the plan was to play dead. We would proactively file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, creating a panic that would drive the stock price into the ground. Then, using Carter's family as a front, we would make a fake takeover bid. The offer would be slightly higher than the vulture funds, but would come with impossibly strict exclusivity clauses. This would make the fund believe a more powerful rival had entered the game. After weighing their options, they would likely cash out their profits and retreat. Once they were gone, we would use a pre-established shell company to buy back all of Vance Corp stock at rock-bottom prices. It was a complex, high-stakes gambit, but it was their only way out. Carter looked at me, his initial contempt having morphed into a stunned, almost fearful respect. He finally realized that the canary he'd mocked was the one playing the entire game. Isabella was barred from the meeting. She stood outside the heavy, carved wooden doors, peering through the crack. She watched the boy she had caged, now calmly dictating the fate of her entire family. Her expression shifted from disbelief to confusion, and then to a final, crushing despair. She finally understood. The empire she had used to imprison me, the gilded cage she so proudly constructed, had just been picked apart, piece by piece, by the very bird she had trapped inside. 10. The plan worked flawlessly. After the whirlwind of bankruptcy and restructuring, Vance Corporation was wounded but alive. My father's company, my mother's boutique, and our familiar Greenwich home were all returned to us. The Vances also paid a substantial compensation package, far exceeding our actual losses. A check for $50 million was deposited into my new bank account. I was free. The first thing I did was meet Leo. I didn't say much. I just pulled him into a hug. "I'm sorry, Mom. It's good to have you back." He punched my shoulder, his eyes red. The second thing I did was go home. The moment I pushed open the door and saw the tears of joy on my parents' faces, I felt like I was breathing again. I walked across the campus of my university, the afternoon sun feeling sharp and new. Nothing had changed, yet everything was different. The way other students looked at me was no longer familiar and friendly. It was a mixture of awe, curiosity, and a strange new distance. I could hear their whispers, the mythologizing of my story. The guy who dumped the campus queen was ruined by her, and then rose from the ashes to bring a corporate dynasty to its knees. My life was back on track, but I knew, with absolute certainty, that some part of me was gone forever. I didn't feel the triumphant joy of revenge I had expected. All I felt was a vast, hollow exhaustion. I had won the war, but the price was the simple, happy-go-lucky kid I used to be. 11. A week later, I saw Isabella again at a coffee shop near campus. She came alone, no bodyguards, no assistant. She had lost weight and was wearing a simple white dress instead of her usual designer power suits. Stripped of her intimidating aura, she just looked like a normal, beautiful, and profoundly sad young woman. She sat across from me, silent for a long time. "When did it start?" she finally asked, her voice hoarse. "The day you destroyed my family and took me home like a pet," I answered calmly. A bitter smile twisted her lips. "I was just so scared of losing you." "That's not love, Isabella. That's possession." I looked at her, not with anger, but with a strange sense of pity. "You weren't in love with me. You were in love with the idea of owning me." Her eyes instantly filled with tears. She took the handkerchief, the one she had treasured for years, out of her small purse and placed it on the table between us. "What about this?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. Was this a lie too? The beginning I cherished so much. I fell silent. That act of kindness wasn't a lie. The boy who offered her a handkerchief in the hallway all those years ago was real. But she had twisted that single, simple moment into a cage for both of us. I stood up and put enough cash on the table to cover my coffee. "It's over. Let me go. And let yourself go, too." 12. I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back. I could hear her muffled sobs behind me, but I didn't stop. I heard that Carter Sterling and Isabella never got together. He developed a strange obsession with me instead, repeatedly trying to recruit me for some major business venture. I turned him down every time. We were not the same kind of people. Isabella took a leave of absence from school and went overseas for long-term psychiatric treatment. I used the seed money from the Van Cess, combined with Leo's technical expertise, to launch my own tech company. As it happened, we specialized in the same cutting-edge field as K-Tech, the company Isabella had once tried to acquire. I was no longer Cole Anderson, the carefree trust fund kid, nor the helpless canary in a cage. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of my own office, looking down at the endless river of traffic below. I was Cole Anderson. Just Cole Anderson. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown international number. It contained only 2 words. "Wait for me." I looked at the message, and to my surprise, I smiled. It was a real smile, born from a deep and powerful sense of confidence. Then I deleted the text, tossing it and the past into the trash where they belonged. I wasn't afraid of threats or of waiting. I finally had the strength to protect myself and the people I loved. Sunlight streamed through the glass, warm on my face. This time, it was the dawn of a future that was truly my own.